Today I'll be reading The Mighty Miss Malone, Chapter 2, The Pie Thief. Jimmy said, "So what's for dessert, Ma?" We had just finished supper and Chiefs and Children's Chow Chat, something Father had made up where we told each other about how our day was been like. Mother's eyes locked on Jimmy's. She was sure he was serious. Well, Master Malone, this evening the chef has prepared for your dessert a lovely stack of dishes which Dessa will wash and you will dry. Jimmy said, "How about tonight we just let those dishes drip dry for themselves?" Mother said, "How about tonight, just like every other night, we let them be dried by a little drip?" Jimmy was still smiling. Most times, if any of us forgot and called him anything that had the word little in it, he'd get pouty and would quit talking. "Can I be excused for a second?" Mother nodded and Jimmy went into the living room. Father said, "Dessert? Now where did that come from?" From this porch, Jimmy yelled, "Hey!" He walked back through the dining room and into the kitchen holding something behind his back. A second later, he came back smiling like a whole Cheshire cat, still with his hands behind his back. He said, "Ma, I'm going to give you one more chance. What would you have to happen for me to take a month or two off from drying the dishes?" Mother said, "What's this all about, Jimmy? You can get a couple of months off doing the dishes if lightning strikes one of us." Jimmy put his hand to his ear. Wait! Was that the roll of thunder I just heard? Ta-da! He showed us a pie tin holding half of a gorgeous apple pie. It was thicker and bigger than any pie I'd ever seen. The crust was the same light brown goldy color as the wood floor in the kitchen. There were strips of dough on it in a crisscross way, and some of the bubbles had bubbled up and oozed out. Father said, "Where'd you get that pie?" Jimmy said, "You don't know, and you don't want to know." I had to shake my head. Jimmy loves talking about rocket ships in outer space, and I figure that's because he's come from a different planet than the rest of the Malones, and most other people who live on Earth, too. He was smiling and making his eyebrows go up and down. He was hopping from one foot to the other. All he needed was a green hat and some pointy shoes with big silver buckles to look like a little brown leprechaun holding on a pot of gold. I shook my head. Jimmy had broken our deal. Our deal was that if I was going to do anything that wasn't about school or books or studying stuff he calls regular living, I'd ask him for advice. I said I'd do it if he promised when he made plans that were about anything more than breathing, he'd ask for my advice. I would have told him that popping up in front of us with this pie for dessert was a terrible idea. Mother's a pretty good baker, and she could never make a pie like this one, and we all knew there was no way the Malones could afford such a pie. It was something you'd think the Carsdales would eat. Mother said, "Where did you get that?" Jimmy looked at Mother and Father. I had to stop him before he lied. "Jimmy, tell the truth. Just tell the truth." I kind of took it off a lady's windowsill, but I paid her for it. Father pushed his chair back and stood up. "Okay, let's go." "Go? Where?" "You're returning this pie. Who ate the rest of it with you?" Jimmy looked to the side, a sure sign that he was going to say was not going to be true. "No one, Pa. It was like that when I found it." Father said, "Found? James Malone, you stole this pie." When Mother is upset, her face gives a warning. The skin between her eyebrows folds, and you can tell how much trouble you're in by counting the lines that pop up there. If it looks like a 1, you're okay. If it looks like a 1, 1, 1, 1, watch out. She was at a 1, 1, 1. "Hold on, Roscoe. Jimmy, this is extremely important. Did you steal that pie from a white neighborhood? No, ma'am. I got it over by the park. Whew, she dropped down to one. Thank God. Father said, let's go. Jimmy got nervous, and that was strange. Living on Earth had made Jimmy very tough, and something like returning a pie shouldn't bother him this much. Then I saw what it was. He'd be humiliated to death if any of his criminal friends saw him being dragged down the street by his father like a 5-year-old kid. Father's tone changed. Move it now. Jimmy's eyes went from father to the front door. He was going to make a break for it. I stood up, took the pie, and said, I'll take him back. We'll return the woman's pie. Jimmy, promise them right now you'll come and won't give me any lip and will do everything I say. Jimmy's eyes went down from me to the door. I stamped my foot. Jimmy's eyes looked around and around. You apologize right now. Tell them you'll work for the woman as long as she wants till the pie's paid off. Do it. Jimmy waited a heartbeat. I'm sorry. I'll do everything Deza says. Father wasn't buying it. Too late. Let's go. I caught Mother's eye and she said, hold on, Roscoe. Come into the kitchen for a minute. Father took Jimmy. Don't you move. And they left us standing there. I slapped Jimmy's arm. We had a deal. You're supposed to come to me before you do anything like this. Jimmy looked down. Aw, sis, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm the only one not pulling his weight around here. I wasn't looking to steal nothing. All I wanted to do was help. What are you talking about? You help all the time. You don't get in as much trouble as you used to. You always bring something for supper. You sing for us whenever we ask. That helps. But I wanted to do something special. I only wanted you all to be proud of me. By stealing, it wasn't stealing. I left the woman some money. Jimmy, you only make things worse by lying all the mother and father came back. Father had the kitchen clock in his hand. How far off does this woman live? Jimmy said, just past the park. Father set the clock on the table. Deza, you've got 45 minutes. We'll be back in time, I promise. We got a clean dish rag to cover the pie, and we left. When we walked, Jimmy passed. Jimmy tried to trick me into getting into a conversation, but I held strong, and I scowled. It was a good thing it wasn't me walking with Jimmy instead of Father. Father's friend Jimmy ever had was sitting on their porch or walking down Gary Streets. Jimmy started the funny walk he and his friends do. He put the thumb of his right hand in his front belt loop and swung his arm left far out in front, then far out behind. He dragged one of his legs and hopped more than walked. Mother thinks this is a scream. She says it's just a nonsense walk some young men use to draw attention to themselves. Rooster strutting, she calls it. Jim, Jim, one rooster strutter yelled. What's shaking? Ain't nothing going on with the rent, baby. Where you headed, Pops? Just taking baby sis over to the park to lay this pie on some po folks. We po, baby. Jimmy laughed. Ain't that the truth? Catch y'all later. I could tell we were close to the woman's house. Jimmy started walking like a normal person, and the nervous look came back to his face. He stopped. Sis, I gotta tell you the truth about something. You don't have to say a word. I know you didn't pay anybody for this pie. I did pay, but it was a whole pie when I first got it. I hid it under the porch chair before I brought it in, and when I got outside, a rotten stray dog was chomping on it like a bone. He ran off the porch with it in his mouth, but dropped it on the sidewalk. Jimmy, you were going to let us eat a pie that a dog had dropped out of his mouth on the ground? Dessa, stop interrupting, please. I cut the chewed parts off and wiped the dog slop off the rest. I said God kissed it, devil missed it, and it wasn't on the ground long enough to pick up any germs. He pointed at a beautiful house across the street. It was that place there. Is there any way you and me could eat the rest and let Mom and Pa think we give it back? We could leave the tin on the porch. Are you crazy? I had to give it a try. Come on, let's get it over with. We're not going to give that poor woman a pie that was dropped on the ground and that a dog has been licking. We've got to get rid of it. He said, I'll drop it in the sewer. I bet the rats won't mind a bit of dog slop. I started to hand the pie to Jimmy and then stopped. What he said made me think. It was such a beautiful pie that it did seem like a shame to waste, but there was no way me and Jimmy would eat it. The Malone shouldn't get anything good from something that Jimmy stole. I pulled the tin back. No, come on. Some poor people do live in the park. They sleep in huts and tents in the woods. We should give human beings first choice to see if they wanted this pie. Except for the big baseball and stands, the park isn't really much of a park. It's just 4 swing sets and 3 or 4 picnic benches next to some woods. As me and Jimmy walked between the trees, we could see 3 saggy, sad little wood and cardboard huts with a group of women and children sitting in front of each one. I walked over to the hut with the most children. A woman looked up. Hello, dear. Hello, ma'am. My name is Dessa Malone, and my brother made a mistake and took a pie from someone, and we were going to return it to the woman, but I found out at the last minute that half of the pie had got chewed on by a dog. Jimmy cut all the doggy parts off with the pie and wiped the dog spit from the rest. It's the most beautiful pie I've ever seen, and I thought it would be a shame to throw it away. I was wondering if you and your kids might like to have it instead. I took the dish rag off, and the woman said, Now that's a pie. Sweetheart, thank you very much. We'd love to have it. She laughed. A little dog slop could never ruin a fine pie like this. Besides, do you know how many times we've had to fight dogs off for something we were going to eat? She dipped a finger in the juices and closed her eyes. My, my, my. Whoever made this knew what she was doing. She pulled a piece of apple out of the pie and reached it to me. She said, I think if you ate one little bit, it wouldn't hurt. We won't let the thief have any if that makes you feel any better. Jimmy said, I paid her some money. The woman said, Boy, hush, hush. It's rude to refuse food if someone offers it to you. Even if it tastes terrible and makes you want to gag, you still have to tell them how much you appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am. I put the piece of apple in my mouth. Eating this pie must be what it feels like to read the greatest book ever at the same time you're sitting in a bathtub full of soapy bubbles like a rich white woman in a magazine. The woman called out, Rosalind, Colleen, come here and bring a sharp knife. This child has gone to heaven and brought us a little piece back. She said, Can y'all stay for supper? The men should be back with some catfish soon. Thank you, ma'am, but we have to get this pie tin back. She slid the pie onto a piece of cardboard and looked at Jimmy. Son, you're so young. You need to learn not to thieve folks' food. Cut it out. She looked surprised. I don't care how old you are. What kind of example are you setting for this little girl here? Jimmy said, I know it was a mistake. I said I was going to apologize. Fine, but before you do, could the two of you do me a little favor? Whilst you're at the pie lady's house, could you distract her so the thief here could stuff a couple of them under his shirt for me? Even Jimmy laughed. I said, Thank you, ma'am. We gotta be going. She said, No, sweetheart, thank you. I wiped the tin with the dish rag as we headed toward the house of the best baker in the world.